All right, friends. Our speaker today is somebody who inspires me. Who inspires me by her great story, how she became transformed from someone who was timid, fearful, to become a real tigress. Somebody who's changing the world. Amanda Sherlock.
Well, I'm wearing the wrong clothes, apparently. Thank you for that. Brian asked me how I'd like to be introduced, and I said, surprise me. So, is this good? Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Some people call it a life sentence. I call it the opportunity of a lifetime. That's what somebody said to me when I was chatting with them at the men's prison a few weeks ago. And I think that's really the most profound example of freedom as an inside job, when someone who has a life sentence considers it to be his opportunity of a lifetime. So I know that the theme this month is simplicity, but I had prepared a talk on freedom for July, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess we're pivoting. Anyhow, but so I do have something for simplicity as well. So today I'm going to be talking about two of the three things that I care the most deeply about. Freedom to Choose, the nonprofit that I have been involved with that goes into prisons. I've been involved with them for over 20 years. And you can see, so that's why I'm wearing my name tag, Freedom to Choose. And then you can tell by my pants, these are my happy pants, we're going to be talking about happy for no reason as well. So that's what's going on. Hi to everybody on Zoom. So for those of you who don't ever come onto Zoom, we have a whole community on Zoom. It's like this little, right, it is, Louise says yes. So it's a whole little community that we have on there. So check it out sometime. Anyhow, so Freedom to Choose is based on one of the 39 books that Viktor Frankl wrote, and it's on man's search for meaning, which is where he was incarcerated. Well, that's too mild of a word. He was in a concentration camp. And so I'll tell you a little bit more about that. He was, even as a child, he was very interested in psychology and the human condition. And he was born in Vienna, Austria, obviously, in 1905. And so he corresponded with Freud, and Freud even published one of Frankl's papers while he was still a teenager. He became part of that Viennese think tank with Freud, Alfred Adler, and he was part of that too. So Alfred Adler, if you hear his name sounds vaguely familiar, he's the person who talked about inferiority complexes and also how birth order affects our personality. So that was over 100 years. But Adler ultimately disagreed with Freud's, shall I say, Freudian approach. So basically Frankl and Adler sort of were teamed up with the concept of what Nietzsche said, he who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. So apart from being a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a neurologist, and a philosopher, he was also very involved in the community. So when he was still a med student, he learned that there were youngsters in Vienna who were killing themselves when their grades came out because they just were overwhelmed with that. And so he created counseling centers to help them with that. And so in 1931, there were no deaths by suicide in Vienna because of the counseling centers that Frankl did. But what's interesting about that is that today, well, actually, it's still today in Palo Alto. When I lived in Palo Alto, which of course, as you can imagine, Palo Alto, Stanford, that whole like intellectual thing. The kids there were throwing themselves under the Caltrain, which was the commuter train going up the peninsula to San Francisco. And while I was there in 2010, they hired a 9x27 guard to stand by that by that crossing where the kids were doing it. And I just checked back, and someone even this year did that. So that whole pressure. So, I think I probably need to send a message to Palo Alto saying, hey, check out what Viktor Frankl did, because, that might help. But I can certainly understand the pressure. So obviously we know this story. The Nazis arrived in Austria and other places, and his father and mother and brother and wife were all killed in a concentration camp. So Frankl was actually in 4 different camps, but what he saw there was what Nietzsche said, he who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. So what he noticed in the camps were that there were some people who lived with generosity, with optimism, and kindness to each other and themselves. And so that was really quite astounding when you consider that. So they were also looking for a why, and when they had something waiting for them or something that they could actively do, they were able to live a more fulfilled life. They were unwilling to be beaten down by the cruelty and dehumanization at the hand of the Nazis. And so that was part of his Man's Search for Meaning book. He recognized that we all have a choice. So let's bring that to today and my beloved Freedom to Choose nonprofit. So that was how I happened to be talking to that man who said, some people call it a life sentence, I call it the opportunity of a lifetime. I saw him yesterday, and I told him that he was my headline today. And he said, with his true humility, oh, I'm surprised you remembered that. I mean, he has, the reason I go is because I get so much inspiration from the folks that I meet there. So when they're, obviously it's not a concentration camp, but their external freedom has been taken away. So all they have to work on is their internal freedom. And that is what I see there every time I go in. Hence his comment, some people call it a life sentence. So you may or may not know that death row has been closed now. Death row is out of business at San Quentin. It's actually been turned into an educational area. There were over 600 people on death row, 600. And they have been moved out to different prisons within California. And there's one of them who transferred. I met him early in January. He arrived in October. Just pause for a minute to think about being on death row. I mean, is that a wake-up call or what? I mean, it's either a wake-up call or a death sentence, right? You have those two choices. He was faced with that choice. So the first time I met him back in January, and I didn't know who he was, and I'll tell you who he is in a minute. I didn't know who he was. He was just a guy who'd come from death row. And he told me all he had to write with was the inside of a ballpoint pen, the flexible, squishy bit. That's what he had to write with. And he wrote 2 books with that squishy pen. One of them is called That Bird Has My Wings. Isn't that, I have goosebumps even telling that, isn't that a poetic name? So guess what? Oprah, so he became a Buddhist. And Pema Chodron's met him. He's had a whole bunch of lamas come to meet him. And he's just an extraordinary man. And when you see him, you can see that he's centered. He has this calmness about him that is, I'll never get there. I will never get there. That just centeredness that he has. But anyhow, so Oprah found out about it, and it was one of her books of the month. Finding That Bird Has My Wings. The subtitle is The Autobiography of an Innocent Man on Death Row. The quick version of that is he was found guilty of conspiracy to murder, even though he was in the cell at the time that this CO was killed. And the people who actually killed the CO were not sentenced to death, but he was. Go figure. So that's the whole thing. Anyhow, so there's an interview that you can watch with Oprah. I can tell you what his books are too. I'm just looking for my quote here because I wrote this down after I printed this out. He said, and this is so true with these guys in prison. This is why I go. He said, I had a greater chance to find myself on death row. Because all he is him and him. That's what it is. And the other thing he said, and this was in the interview with Oprah, there is suffering on the outside, but people don't realize it. And anyhow, he's just remarkable. And I said to him shortly after I met him, I said, do people here know who you are? And he's going like, well, not really. But what I find fascinating about him is that he's so present. When I talk to him, he is fully present, fully present. And he asks interesting questions. He's funny. He's so centered. He's just the most remarkable person. He really is. So there's another guy who is someone I see often. His name's Andre Williams. And in addition, so by the way, there are so many programs going on at California Men's Colony that you can't get a room to do a new program. I want to do Happy for No Reason, but I can't get an in. I'm going to have to squish it in with something else. When I do grief recovery there, I literally don't get a vacation. I have to start right back again when the program's ended, because if they find out that the room's empty, they're going to take it and give it to somebody else. I mean, there is that much, which is good. I mean, this is a 20-year experience. I mean, 20 years ago, there was no rehabilitation in men's prison or any prisons. So Andre is somebody who I see often. And this was something that's on the Prison Yoga Project website, so I just want to read this to you. My name is Andre Williams, and I'm a lifer. I'm 56 years old. I've been practicing yoga here at the California Men's Colony for well over a year. I've been blessed to learn from the amazing yoga instructors Stephanie, Mary, and Mark. Stephanie has a yoga studio in San Luis. I would like to share my personal experience and growth since learning the principles of mindfulness and how to have healthier connections with self and others. Yoga has provided me with an opportunity to increase my self-awareness and impulse control. This inspires and motivates me to face each day with a positive, powerful, and productive mindset. Now remember, he's a lifer, okay? So he's like committed. Practicing yoga helps me to learn that there are areas in my relationships with others that require self-regulation and effective stress management. From this mindset, I can continue to apply more helpful coping skills and stress-reducing strategies. For example, anyone who's done yoga knows this. For example, box breathing, alternate nostril breathing, mountain pose, child's pose, low cobra, or just mindfully visualizing any of the poses I am learning. There are even moments where I'm able to say namaste and I experience a deeper connection with all things. This is my way of being at peace and living in harmony with mind, body, and spirit. So that's just half of what he said. So he learned about a book called Jail to Jobs, and he contacted the author, who got right back to him and sent him a whole bunch of books. So now he's doing book study on Jail to Jobs on his yard. So he is someone who is out wanting to make a difference in the world. So with Freedom to Choose, when we do our workshops, we invite the guys to write a thank you letter. And they do it on the breaks. And there are hundreds of these. And wouldn't you know that the one I got was from Andre? And so this is, Thank you for the generosity, kindness, love, and human kindness your support has provided me. Your support has provided me with the gifts of hope, joy, peace, balance, and connection. Each day, and I know he does this, each day I am able to open my eyes and make the choice to be the best version of myself in all my relationships. This is freedom. So there you go. There's another guy who is interested in helping people with childhood trauma. A year or so ago, Freedom to Choose did a curriculum on John Bradshaw's Homecoming, which had to do with trauma. So he has copies of those books and the homework for that. So he does that on his yard. So that's one of his whys. There's another guy I know who simply keeps, speaking of simplicity, he keeps shampoo, soap, toothpaste in his cell in case anybody needs it. And he just gives it to them. So there's that kind of compassion and generosity that's in there. It's just so extraordinary about how they live. And I told them yesterday, I said, when I leave here and I'm at the traffic light to go back into San Luis, what I take with me in my car is compassion. I take this big whoosh of compassion with me because that is how they're living, even though they're incarcerated. Many of the guys we know are lifers, many of them. But they have chosen, they've had that moment to choose. So with everything that's going on the world today, I wanted to look at ways that we can have our own internal freedom despite the outside circumstances. So Frankl said, between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. And that is what they're doing at CMC. So from my point of view, in between the stimulus and response, that space is a chance to breathe. It's a chance to take a moment. The other thing he said, which is certainly true in the concentration camps, is everything can be taken from a man or a woman. But the last of human freedoms, the choice to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way, cannot be taken away. That is our inner freedom. And the third quote, which is, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we're challenged to change ourselves. And that, I think, is where we are right now in this country. We're challenged to change ourselves. When I focus on a solution, even though I can't see it, I get out of that space of doom and gloom. So the question I hear in my spiritual conversations that I've been having is, if this were happening for a higher good, what would that be? When I sit in that question, I feel better. I'm not oppressed by what I see outside. If this were happening for a higher good, what would it be? Being in curiosity really helps me. So now we're back onto Happy for No Reason. So I wanted to give you some practical things that we can all do to bring in some inner peace. So some of you have taken the Happy for No Reason class. So in Happy for No Reason, there's a home for happiness with seven aspects. But foundation is taking responsibility for our lives. Because if we don't take responsibility for our lives, it's as they say in the Bible, it's sown on rocky ground, sown on sand. What's the sand really? Not the rocks. So there are 3 aspects to taking responsibility for our lives. Anybody remember what they are? Blame, shame, complain. That's when we know we've given away our power. If we're blaming, we're shaming or complaining. So blaming, we first start by blaming our parents, right? They make us go to bed early. They won't let us have an extra helping of ice cream. All of that stuff. Then we blame our teachers. They gave us a bad grade. They were unfair. Then we blame our boyfriends or girlfriends. Then we get married and blame our spouse. Then we blame our children. So then we also blame the traffic, right? Oh, I'm late because there was traffic. So that is not taking responsibility for our lives, is blaming things. Shame. So shame is usually blaming myself for something that I did, or shaming somebody else for something that they did that we don't think they should have done or was wrong. When I come from a place of love, I can do things in a different way. And then there's complaining. So I can't speak for Wales, but England is a country of complainers.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm not going to drag Wales into this. I'm not dragging Wales into this. I'm just speaking for myself. When I call somebody in England, first thing I hear is a complaint about the weather. It's too hot or too cold, too wet or too dry. Those are the 4 choices of complaint about the weather. I'm not kidding. I'm really not kidding. I mean, even strangers complain about them. I mean, that's like... So, on a larger perspective, though, the complaint is, I can't do X because of Y. And that's not to say that we should ignore these things, but what we need to do is to see a better way to address it. So, as Frankel said, when we're no longer able to change a situation, we're challenged to change ourselves. And Maya Angelou says, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude. Don't complain. And my dear, wonderful dad, who said this so many times, said, don't ring telephone bells. In other words, get into action. Do something. So today what we can do is we can get a bumper sticker, we can write a postcard, we can hold a sign, we can vote, we can encourage other people to vote. As the song said, be a stand. We can be a stand for peace, we can be a stand for love. And so that is, for me, when I do that, that helps me. You know, I've shared often here about my spirituality of the 4-way stop, the sacredness of a 4-way stop. When I get to a 4-way stop, I bless everybody else in the 4-way stop. And I let people go ahead of me, or if there's any doubt, I certainly let people go ahead of me. And I'm honestly disappointed when there's nobody else in the 4-way stop, because I'm like, oh, there's nobody to bless. So action always helps me feel better. As I said earlier, if this was happening for a higher good, what would that be? So I want to invite you to do a little exercise that we do in the Happy for No Reason class, just to kind of see where you fall and where you need to kind of shore yourself up a little bit. So we're going to look at blame, shame, and complain. So if you are comfortable, close your eyes. You do this privately. I'm not asking you to do it with anybody else. It's just you and you, okay? So let's just take a look at those things, shame, blame, and complain. So something or someone I blame is, fill in the blank. Everyone got something? Okay. So the next one is something I shame myself or someone else for. What do I shame myself for? And thirdly, this is a juicy one, something I complain about is. Everyone got something? Some things? So the turnaround on this, the inner freedom is, if I were to take a little more responsibility for my freedom and my happiness, I would, ... what would that be? What could you do today, right now, to take a little more responsibility for your freedom?
Did you ask us to speak them out loud?
No, no, this is just you and yourself. Thank you. Thank you for checking. Everybody have something? Need a bit more time? Who needs a bit more time for taking responsibility? Oh, okay. So that gives you an idea about how you could have a little more inner freedom. In children's literature, British children's literature, there are a couple of characters that really stand out as the complainer versus the optimistic one. Winnie the Pooh and Eeyore. So Winnie is characterized as generous, happy, optimistic, resilient, living with inner freedom. Versus Eeyore, who had a victim mindset, always complaining, always feeling that there's going to be bad luck, nothing's okay. And I didn't read very much as a child. I didn't know this then, I have dyslexia. But I was always resistant to hearing about Eeyore because that's who I was. And to Brian's point, I used to be timid. I call it shy, shut down, lonely, and depressed. But I was completely an Eeyore in that, like, oh. Now, of course, the weather had a lot to do with it. So it really did. Try living in England for a year. So who are you going to be this week? Are you going to be a Winnie or an Eeyore? Which way do you want to go? So if you haven't noticed, pretty much every talk I do here is about unity principle number 3. We create our life experiences through our way of thinking. And that's exactly how we create our inner freedom, by watching our thoughts and remembering that between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response grows our life, grows our growth and our freedom. So as Andre would say, namaste.